Hey Flosstube friends, my name is Lynn and this is my channel Those Missing Stitches. Today is Saturday, July 5th, and this is my Flosstube number 31. Welcome and thank you for joining me, and welcome back if you're a subscriber and have watched me before. I so appreciate you being here. I am back from StitchCon that I attended in June. It's just a whirlwind of kicking off summer that was June. At StitchCon I just met so many amazing people and had such a great time. I was horrible at taking pictures, so I don't have a single thing to show for it. Maybe a couple of things of like, I did have a finish, so I did get a picture of me with my finish, but not a lot to show you of the people that I met. There was just so many amazing people. The memories will definitely serve for me for a lifetime. That was just a great experience, and I really appreciated. There were a few people that showed me, went out of their way to show me stuff that they had stitched on my fabric. There was a few things on the finish table that were stitched on my fabrics as well. So that just really makes me giddy. It was just the highlight of my trip. And also donating to the auction for the charity fundraisers was just an amazing experience of people bidding on my fabric to actually raise money for charity. So that was just a really great experience, and I'm sure I'll do it again. If you ever do have an opportunity to go to StitchCon or any sort of stitchy retreat, I definitely recommend it if it's within your means. This is definitely one of the bigger ones, so the amount of people can be a little overwhelming. There's over 300 people. So if people, that big of a crowd is not your thing, I wouldn't recommend this one. You can start with a smaller one. But, if you want to meet a lot of Flosstubers and a lot of people that you recognize from YouTube, this is definitely the place to go. So I highly recommend any sort of stitchy retreat. It was just such a joy and a highlight of my year so far, for sure. So for today, it is July, so I typically like to go through a mid-year WIP-Parade. First, I'm also going to show you it is a new quarter, and I always have new colors, fabric colors in my fabric shop, so I'll show you real quick those 4 new colors. And then I'll go through my WIP-Parade, and then I have just a small thing about plans of something I plan to start this month. And then I will talk about books. I only have a couple of books that I read in June, so it'll be a short section at the end of this video talking about that. So let's get started. I'll first start with the new fabrics that are in my shop that just got released on July 1st. First is called Bashful Beth, and as always, I name all my fabrics after book characters and some sort of adjective that describes them. This is after Beth March from Little Women, and it is it is hard to describe. Shell pink is what the DMC color, it matches like a light shell pink. I was kind of debating between, is it an orange, is it a pink, and it looks a little bit of both. So shell color is actually the perfect description for this. Just a very neutral, peachy pink, orange, hard to describe, but very light and very neutral. Next is Wisely Watson, after Watson from the Sherlock Holmes series. This is also another one that's kind of hard to describe. There wasn't really a DMC color that was an exact match to this. It's kind of a combo of 452 and like a light purple. It's hard to see I don't know, it's so hard to describe because sometimes I see like a taupey brown, sometimes I see a little more gray, and sometimes I see just a super light hue of like a super light purple. I think that's just the way that the cool gray mixes with the brown that's in here and makes it just slightly more of a purplish tint. I wouldn't call it a purple, but I put it in the purple second. It is still just a really great neutral, but on the cooler side for sure. Okay, next are 2 that are perfect for the Halloween season. So I'm very excited about these. This one is called Hardy Hester, after Hester Prynne from the Scarlet Letter. Very orange, peachy orange, not like a bright Halloween orange. I mean, it is a bright orange, but it's more of a peachy orange and some red modeling in there. It's a really cool, like sunsetty colors and perfect for Halloween. And last but not least, this one is Sassy Sophia, after Sophia from the color purple, and it is a color purple, a very deep, kind of darker purple with even darker purple modeling. It's showing up on camera definitely a little more contrasty than it is in person. It's a little more muted. There's definitely some modeling on there, but it's not as dark as it's showing up on camera. I don't know if I can get it to maybe more like that, even less modeling than, or contrasty than that. But the color showing up pretty good. It's just not quite as drastic of the modeling as that. Okay, so that is it. Those are all available in my fabric shop. If you want to check it out, I do have a link below. So now let's go through my WIP-Parade. I always like to talk about stats, and since I talk about stats for the month, I'm going to just give you a quick update of what I worked on in June, and then I'll just go through all of my WIPs of everything I've worked on in 2025 and give you stats of all of 2025 so far through the end of June. So for June, I worked on a total of 13 projects. I did a total of 21,123 stitches. I had 3 new starts, and I did have 1 finish, a real quick finish at StitchCon, which was super fun to ring the bell. So for all of 2025, I'm going to show you everything in the WIP-Parade, everything that I've worked on since I did a WIP-Parade at the very beginning of January for the beginning of this year. So everything I've worked on since then through the end of June. I have worked on a total of 36 projects for a total of 159,814 stitches. I started 19 projects and I finished 6. So I'm going to go through those, and I'm going to start with my finishes. I'm going to start with my StitchCon finish, which was a real quick, I completely forgot I ordered this pattern, and it came right before I went to StitchCon, so I started it like a few days before I went to StitchCon with the intent of finishing it there. This is called Quote the Stitcher. It's by My Big Toe Designs, and I stitched it on 20 count Startling Steerforth 80, which is a color from my shop, with Mo's Sale silks in the color black 2/1 full cross, and here's my finish. I saw this one at Angie Sawyer's house when I went to her house for a stitch together a couple months ago. She had it on like a 32 counter and 28 count 1/1, super small. I loved it, super small. And she had it framed and fully finished, which is something I'm not very good at, but maybe someday. I did make some boo-boos in counting and ended up having to fib the top border just a little bit. I was 1 stitch off, so I just added a stitch and it made it a little longer on the end, but I can't really tell, so I'm totally okay with it. So that is my big finish for June. Woohoo! Okay, for the rest of 2025, I did have 5 other finishes. The next one is 324 by Works by ABC. I stitched this one on 25 count Silvery Moon Lugano 1/1 full cross with the called for DMC, and here's that finish. I think I have this the right way. No, I do not. It is this way. Totally upside down. That's the finish. So there we go. And this one was super fun to work on. I just love how colorful it is. Just gorgeous. Using all those colors. It was kind of a pain to pull all of them from my DMC collection, but it was worth it in the long run. It was definitely came out gorgeous. Next is Basie Hands Happy Heart. This is a Patreon exclusive from Hello from Liz Matthews. I stitched this one on 20 count Devoted Dobbin, a color from my shop as well, with DMC B5200 2/1 full cross. And here's where my finish is. Love how that came out too. Made some boo-boos on this one too. But I was able to just, because it's a mirror in all 4 sections of the flowers, I was just able to mirror the mistake on both sides and make it a little bigger. So that worked. Next is Pride and Prejudice. This is Alina Ova designs that I decided not to stitch the border on, so I didn't do the full thing. I'm calling it a finish though because I didn't intend to stitch the border. I stitched it on 20 count Earnest Emma, which is a color from my shop, with Silks for You PR 065 2/1 full cross. And I finished this one in honor of, you'll see several of my pieces are in honor of Jane Austen's the anniversary of her 250th birthday this year, and the Stitch Jane 2025 Sal hashtag. So here's my finish on that one. Love how this one came out too, with that blue on blue. So pretty. And of course in honor of Jane Austen, who is fabulous, one of the greatest authors of all time. Next is Sweetheart Chart, also a Patreon exclusive by Hello from Liz Matthews. I stitched this one on 20 count Doting Dora, which is a color from my shop, with Color and Cotton Dragon Fruit 2/1 full cross. And here's my finish on that one. I actually created this light pink fabric color just to go with this pattern because I had something in mind when I saw it on her Patreon and knew I wanted to stitch it in these colors. So I came up with this fabric color for this. Hoping to finish that one someday in a pillow. Beyond my capabilities at this point, so I might be recruiting some help. Okay, my last finish so far for 2025 is Quite Like Reading. This is by Abby Sue Designs, and I stitched it on 16 count Humorous Hyacinth, which is a color from my shop. I don't typically stitch on 16 count. I used to, but I've kind of moved on to like smaller counts since then. And I started this one, I think, on 20 count, but there's a lot of fractional stitches, and it was just too much with the fractional stitches. So I switched down to 16, and that ended up working out well for the fractional stitches. I did stitch it with all the called for DMC, 2 over 1 full cross. And here's my finish. And again, a Jane Austen tribute, which seems to be for sure a theme for me this year. Okay, so that is it for my finishes. And next I'm going to talk about my other 2 new starts for June that you haven't seen before. If on my new starts, I'm just going to show you where I'm at now. I don't have like a before picture. That would be a lot to try to do that for what you saw last month or whatever the last month that I showed it was. On my other WIPs that I started before this year, I will show you a before picture, but for these ones that I've started this year, I'm just going to show you where I'm at now. So my first new start for June is Mansfield Park Quaker. This is by Twin Peaks Primitive. I'm stitching this one on 22 count Antique White Hardinger, 1 over 1 full cross with mostly the called for colors. I did end up stitching a whole section. I started this at StitchCon, and I stitched a whole section in the called for pink, which was DMC 316. And I really didn't like how the pink was kind of just in your face pink. It was bright pink. And Sarah from Millennial Fabrics was sitting next to me, and she was stitching strawberry milk cow or something like that. And she had just a palette of pinks for that one. And I asked her to borrow one of her more muted like DMCs and stitched a couple pieces with it. And I just went, yes, this is the one that it needs to have. It's just more on the lighter, not quite so bright like a lot of the 316 was. So I switched it to 223, and here's where I'm at now. I got quite a lot done on this. I did a total of 2,201 stitches, and I'm at 11.47%, so pretty far on that one for just starting it a couple weeks ago. And I love how that pink is coming out so much more than the bright pink that 316 was showing initially. Coordinates much better. So this is the section I did in that bright pink, and I ended up and then I did this in the 223, and went, no, that goes so much better with this peach. It just coordinated so much better. So I frogged this whole section and restitched it in the 223, and liking that so much better. Okay, my other new start was also from StitchCon. This is called Mr. Farrar's Confession, and again, another Jane Austen reference, so both of these are Jane Austen related. This is by Annie B's Folk Art. I'm stitching this one on 22 count Macchiato Hardinger by Bee Stitch Me, and I did a full color and cotton conversion on this one, and I'm stitching it 1 over 1 full cross with my color and cotton choices. And here's where I'm at now. I did a total of 2,648 stitches, and I'm at 25.75%, so I think that's pretty far. Still a lot to do in the lawn, and I haven't quite decided which green I'm going to use. I have a couple choices in color and cotton. I'm going to stitch the rest of it around it and see what green kind of catches my eye for coordinating with it. So you can't, it's hard to tell, but the white is done in there. If I can get it to focus, there we go. So I could just stitch, the roof line and the house line without having to refer back to the pattern, so make it super easy for the rest of filling in that house. Love how this one is coming out in that color and cotton conversion. I'm going to hold for just a second and pause it so I can pull those colors and show you what I came up with for the conversion. Okay, I'm back, and I've pulled all the color and cotton that I've converted for this one, so Mr. Farrar's Confession, and here's all the colors I've pulled so far. Look great against that fabric. And then I just have to decide on the green. I did pull this one, which is definitely a grass green, a lighter grass green. I know it coordinates well with it, but I think I want something slightly darker, especially just around the swans to kind of make those swans stand out a little more. So we'll see how that goes. And then I also have this fabulous needle minder that Shannon gave me at StitchCon, so thank you, Shannon. It's a bunch of books, so definitely something along my wheelhouse. Okay. Now, next is my other new starts from before that you've seen before, but maybe haven't seen since some of them in a couple months. So this was actually a restart for me. This is Kingdom of Books. It's an Andriana chart in a full kit from Andriana, and I ended up switching out the fabric so I don't have to stitch the background of the books. I am stitching this one on 20 count vintage country mocha with the kit threads 2/1 full cross, and here's where I'm at. For a restart, I originally had it on 18 count, and it was just this super like stiff and scratchy thread. I just really wasn't enjoying it, so I'm enjoying it so much more on this 20 count. And then I like the idea that it's a little bookshelf looking fabric, so I don't have to stitch all that background. And I do plan to put in my favorite books for the titles instead of the book titles that are on the actual pattern. Next is, I think I started this one on January 1st. This is New York by Luca S. It is a kit, and I switched out the fabric for this one as well to have 25 count Easy Guide Lugana, just so I could have the grid and I could do 10 stitch and hopefully make it a little faster. I have done a total of 3,576 stitches for 3.47%, and here's where I'm at. Not a ton, but liking this 25 count Lugana for a kit, just making it so much easier to follow. I found when I was doing I've done kits since I was a kid, and I often stopped on them because I would lose my place. I'm definitely an extreme cross country even when it comes to kits. So, finishing a full color and then realizing I made a mistake somewhere and I'm counting everything off of that stitch, just most of them I stopped because I screwed them up so bad. So really liking the easy guide on this to make it a little easier to follow. Okay, next is another kit. This is by Dimensions. This is one of those ones that I screwed up twice. So I restarted it on 25 count Easy Guide Lugana. This is Paris Market by Dimensions Gold. I am stitching it 2/1 10 stitch with the kit threads that come with it. I did a total in 2025 of 4,716 stitches for 8.82%, and here's where I'm at. I love the colors in this one. I haven't gotten to them yet, but all those colorful spring colors that are in the flowers towards the bottom, I'm excited to get to that part. Okay. Next is Rainbow Diagonal. This is one from Emblem Designs on Etsy. I started this one on 25 count Silvery Moon Lugana when I finished 324 and wanted something else that was really colorful like that. I started this one, and I'm stitching this 1/1 full cross with CXC threads. I did a total of 2,013 stitches so far in 2025 for 7.49%. And here's where I'm at. I did do a little bit on this in June, but not much. I think maybe 2 or 3 more of the actual rows. Okay. Next is The Extraordinary Bird Sal. I am not caught up on this by any means. I'm like 4 or 5 features behind, but I'm okay with that. This is by Lola Crow Cross Stitch. I'm stitching this on 20 count Heavenly Hero, which is a color for my shop, with the called for DMC 2/1 full cross. So far I've stitched 8,156 stitches, but again, like 4 features behind. So here's where I'm at. Got a little bit into the next feature since the last time I showed this, but only a couple hundred stitches in. So quite a ways to go to be caught up, but I'm okay with that. Okay, next is Medicine and Poison by the Witchy Stitcher. I'm stitching this one on 18 count Black Ada, 2/1 full cross with the call for DMC. I've done a total of 1,423 stitches for 13.88%. So not bad. It's going pretty quick. It's not a huge pattern. It's just really hard to work on the black, so I don't pull it out very often. But this is where I've gotten to. It's coming out so cool on that black. It's worth it. I just need to hunker down and get to it. Okay, next is the Salty Bitch by Stitch Is So Beautiful. I'm stitching this one on 25 count Easy Guide Lugana with the called for DMC 3/110. I've done a total of 3,274 stitches for 3.05%. So this is a bigger one, and here is where I'm at. Love these blues and how these blues are coming out. And excited to get back into that one. Next is Read the Book, Stitch the Things. I started this one because Pam from Just Keep Stitching. I saw this on her channel last month and decided to start it as part of Mania. I did a full conversion into different colors of the colors that I actually want to use, and I'm loving it so much better. This is by Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts that you can find on Etsy. I'll link everything down below for all of these patterns as well. I started this one on 22 count white hardinger from Artiste, and with my own DMC color conversion 1/1 full cross. I've stitched 2,794 stitches for 37.09%, and here's where I'm at. Did do a little bit more in June. Got into that book on top of that owl, and OMG, the fractional stitches. I made a total mess of that, but I think it looks fine, so I'm just going with it. And that's the only place where there are fractional stitches is in that book, thankfully. Everything else is just full crosses, so I'm past that point, and if I don't look at it too close, I'm totally fine with how it turned out. Okay, next is the Stitchers Book Club. This is another SAL hosted by the Clouds Factory. Not caught up on this one or anywhere near it either. They just had a new release on July 1st, and I can't even remember who it was. I'll have to look it up, and I'll put it right here for the text for who the author was for the new release. And what I have worked on, I am working on 18 count macchiato Ada from Bestitch Me with the call for DMC 2/1 full cross. I've done a total of 3,845 stitches, and here's where I'm at. I have finished the J.R.R. Tolkien and the Mary Shelley sections, and I've moved over to the other section, which I think is Shakespeare. Plan to finish that shelf and then work my way up. So all three of the top shelves have been released, and then one section of the shelf below it, which is the new one that I can't remember. So, but it's coming out super cute. Okay. Next is my biggest one, McGonagall's Library. This is charted by the Cross Stitch Studio, and I am stitching it on 28 count Easy Guide Lugana, 2/1 10 stitch with CXC threads. I've done a total of 25,653 stitches for 4.01%. So this is one that's going to take me my entire lifetime, but I'm okay with that. I'm enjoying the process. And here's where I'm at. Just have been working the 310. Trying to get some color finish in there, maybe, and I might go back and do some other colors just to finish some sections or see some sections fill in. I don't know. Going with whatever inspires me on this one. Okay, next is Strawberry Band Sampler. I say this wrong every time. I think it's just called Strawberry Sampler. This is by Vibsters on Etsy, and I started it on 25 count Silvery Moon Lugana. I'm using the called for DMC 1/1 full cross. I've done a total of 5,737 stitches, and I should mention I am not doing every band, so I'm doing a recharted version, just eliminating some of the bands. So of the portions that I'm doing, I have actually done a total of 24.25%, so not too bad. And here's where I'm at now. Love this color palette. It's coming out so cute together. So beautiful. Okay. Next is Library by Little House Needleworks. I'm stitching this one on 20 count Oat by Bestitch Me with the called for specialty threads, which I think are all classic colorworks if I'm not mistaken. I have done a total of 807 stitches for 4.32%, and here's where I'm at. This is one of my Mania starts that were mostly book related. I love how that's coming out too. So that was it for my 2025 new starts. Now I'm going to go through things that you've seen before or were actually shown in my last WIP-Parade in January because I'd started them before 2025. So this first one is an Enchanted Place. The artist is Eder Jose Rosa, and it's charted by Stitches So Beautiful. I'm doing a crop version of this. I'm not doing the entire pattern, so it is cropped down quite a bit. I am stitching it on 25 count Easy Guide Lugana with CXC threads, 2/1 10 stitch. Here's where I was when I showed this in my last WIP-Parade. And since then, I've done 3,546 stitches in 2025. For a total of 6,255, and that's 11.82% of the total that I cropped down version that I plan to stitch. And here's where I'm at now. love these pastel colors. So pretty. And I like the crop down version. It makes it a little more manageable to think about stitching it or finishing it at some point. So next is Black Roses by Owl Forest Embroidery. I'm stitching this one on 20 count Celebrating Sealy, which is a color from my shop, using Pirate Robin Designs Imperial Purple Floss 2/1 full cross. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. In 2025, I've done a total of 2,968 stitches, and in total on this piece now, I'm at 4,948 stitches for 13.6%. And here's where I'm at. Love this purple on purple. It's kind of hard to tell on the video. It does look a little more blackish on the video, but that is definitely like a deep purple in person. It's a very gorgeous color of floss. Okay, next is another Owl Forest Embroidery. This is Black Vintage Sampler. I'm stitching this one on an 18 count Aida that I dyed myself. It's kind of close to Devoted Dobbin, which is a color from my shop, just a little lighter. So it's just something I threw in and couldn't quite recreate the exact color, but Devoted Dobbin is pretty close, just a little darker. I'm stitching it with Silks for You PR 070 2/1 full cross, which is the Silks for You black. Here's where I was the last time I showed that, or not the last time, at my last WIP-Parade. And in 2025, I've done 1,175 stitches, and now in total I'm at 9,895 stitches for 42.33%. So almost at that halfway point. And here's where I'm at now. Looking gorgeous. Okay. Next is Fruits of Plenty. This is my chosen piece for the Andrew the Rennie Stitcher Whip into Shape Sal, which I'm caught up on through last Sunday. I tend to check whatever the running miles are on Sunday for the week and catch up on Sunday for whatever the total stitches are for that week. So here's where I was when I showed this in my last WIP-Parade. This is by Modern Folk Embroidery. I'm stitching it on 25 count Silvery Moon Lugana with DMC, I think 932 and 3750. I forget the exact colors, but if you want to know, just shoot me an email. And I'm stitching it 1/1 full cross. In 2025, I've done 6,539 stitches, so definitely whipping this one into shape. And for my total, I'm at 26,937 stitches for 56.83%. And here's where I'm at now. Definitely making progress. I think I've only worked on that house that's right there in that section. That's all I worked on in June, but I've definitely made more progress through the rest of 2025. And extra special thanks to Andrew, who I got to meet at StitchCon in person for this Whip into Shape challenge. It has definitely kept me going on this pattern and getting some progress on this. So thank you. Okay, next is Morning Blooms. This is by Carolyn Manning. I started it for Manning May of last year. And I have another piece of 18 count Aida that I dyed myself and don't have an exact color, but is fairly close to Dauntless Deborah. Trying to recreate this color. I'm using the called for DMC 2/1 full cross. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. And in 2025, I've worked on this quite a bit, 6,868 stitches, and now in total I'm at 9,945 stitches for 88.44%. This is definitely my closest to a finish. I hope to finish it in the next couple months. Here's where I'm at now. This is my piece I take with me to my son's swim meets, because there's hours and hours. If you're a swim parent, you know how long you just sit there in between like 1 minute of swimming for 3 hours of waiting. So this goes with me, so I work on that a little bit during those swim meets. And definitely made some progress in the last couple months since he's been in swim. Getting super close to a finish on that. Okay, next is My Golden Path. The artist is Adrienne Borda and it's charted by Unconventional Cross Stitch. I'm stitching this one on 28 count Easy Guide Lugana with the called for DMC 2/1 tent. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. I only worked on this for 1 day in 2025 for 699 stitches, but in total I'm at 14,919 stitches for 6.62%. So not bad. And here's where I'm at now. Did a color, well, no, just worked on 310 and then started going back in with some of these blues, or just this one blue, I think, for now, just to try to get some color in there. Love the reflection in her eye. So cool. Love Adrian Borders artwork. So awesome. Okay, next is Night Circus Lovely number 7. The artist is Jessica Jackson and is charted by the Sewing Shop Inc. I'm stitching this one on 25 count Easy Guide Lugana, 3/110 stitch with the called for DMC. Here's where I was the last WIP-Parade. And in 2025, I've done an additional 3,253 stitches, and now in total, I'm at 43,177 stitches for 27.12%. And here is where she's at. And I call her she. She always has a life of her own. This one is just so gorgeous, and I love her expression. I kind of want to go back and just finish her face, and I think I said that last time. But we'll see where this one takes me. Okay, next is Pride and Prejudice Sampler. This is another Twin Peaks primitive Jane Austen inspired pattern that I started last year after StitchCon. I'm stitching it on 25 count Honeydew by Forbidden Fiber Co. 1/1 full cross with the called for DMC. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. And in 2025, I've done an additional 1,649 stitches. So more in 2025 than I did last year. In total, I'm at 2,216 stitches for 12.04%. And here's where I'm at now. So getting into that house, which is quite a lot of stitching. And sorry about the little pieces of fabric there. Loving this color palette too, especially against this like minty green fabric. It looks gorgeous. Next is Saga by Long Dog Samplers. Another giant piece that I started for Long Dog Leap Year last year with the intent of finishing it by the next leap year, but I'm nowhere near being able to do that. I have made some progress on it, did a little bit more in June. I'm stitching this one on 20 count Lugana in the color sensitive Sylvie, which is a color from my shop, 2/1 full cross with DMC 930 and 931. And I think that's part of my mistake. I really kind of wish I'd done it monochromatic, or even done like an ombre effect and done like a full color for a full row, and then maybe done another color for another row. I'm just finding as I'm stitching it that if I could just go with one color, I'd be stitching it a lot faster, but I'm second guessing myself and trying to remember which of the lighter color goes where, and where do I not need to stitch in this color because it's this other color. So, and I've made a lot of mistakes and had to frog stuff because I intended it to be the other color. If I could just go with it in a monochromatic, I would be a lot better or a lot faster at it. So I'll have to remember that for my other pieces. But for now, I'm going with it because it is coming out gorgeous. It's just I'm not totally inspired to stitch on it because I have to think about it so much, and I'd really just like to not have to think about it. But I don't know if I said this yet, but here's where I was when I showed this in the last WIP-Parade. In 2025, I've done an additional 1,505 stitches, so not much. But in total, I'm at 19,157 stitches for 18.43%. And here's where I'm at. Ooh, see if I can even fit it on screen there. Definitely a big one, only in that second row. There's a lot more to go. Thinking about just finishing that dark blue for the outside of the arches, and then maybe deciding what gets the lighter stuff on the inside of the arches and going with that. I'm not really sure. Trying to figure out what's going to work for me on this one and kind of being inspired to work on this again. Definitely watching Andrew the Runner Stitcher make progress on his makes me want to pick it up again, but Andrew is doing his in monochromatic again, like I wish I did. So it's nice to see it on there and kind of be inspired to pick it up again, but it's slow going. Definitely won't be by the next leap year. Okay, next is Stained Glass Alice. I'm not even sure who, I got it on Etsy, but I'm not even sure from who. But I think there's still some out there that you could get this from other designers out there. I'm stitching this on 28 count Easy Guide Lugana with the called for DMC 2/110. I only worked on it for one day in 2025 because I wanted to kind of test the 28 count to see how I liked it for starting McGonagall's library. And so I just did an additional 542 stitches. In total now I'm at 4,635 stitches. Oh, here's where I was the last time, I don't even think I ever showed this before because it's been several years since I started it and several years since I worked on it. So I don't even think I have a before picture, but I'll put it up if I do. But in total now I'm at 2.5%, and here's where I'm at. Love the stained glass look and finishing that black around it and then filling in some of the color. I deliberately went with the yellow to go with the lighter color to make sure I could see before I started something as big as McGonagall's library on 28 count. And it's okay. It's a little harder if you make mistakes to frog it for sure, but not impossible. Okay. Next is Stephen King House. This is by the Witchy Stitcher. I'm stitching this on 20 count Startling Steerforth, which is a color from my shop. 2/1 full cross with the called for DMC. Here's where I was on my last WIP-Parade. And in 2025, I've done an additional 1,404 stitches. And in total, I'm at 2,057 stitches for 13.28%. Definitely pulling this one out now that like July kind of kicks off the spooky Halloween season for me and wanting to stitch all things Halloween. So this one's coming out again. And here's where I'm at now. Just a little bit of the room's done, or outline done. Nothing actually completely done here. But it's coming back out. Next is The Perfect Love I Never Had. This is another artist is Adrienne Borda and charted by Unconventional Cross Stitch. I'm stitching this one on 25 count Easy Grid Lugana with the called for DMC 3/110. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. And I did work on it a few more days in 2025 for an additional 942 stitches. Now in total, I'm at 13,768 stitches for 28.33%. And here's where I'm at now. Love that eye. Kind of creepy and cool at the same time, but Adrienne Borda does fantastic with like reflections in the eye. It's so artistic, it's cool. Okay. Next is Winter Solstice. This is by Joan Elliott Designs. I'm stitching this one on 25 count Lugana in the color sensitive Sylvie from my shop. 1/1 full cross with Silks for You PR070, which is their black. Here's where I was in my last WIP-Parade. In 2025, I've done an additional 1,357 stitches, and in total, I'm at 6,366 stitches. And here's where I'm at now. I did find recently on Etsy that someone has the rights to chart her Joan Elliott Designs in a PDF format. So I am testing it on All Hallows Eve and it's working really well. So I'll probably purchase this one in the PDF as well. And I'll link that down below if you want the PDFs of this chart. I do have the paper chart at this point, but I think I will, when I start working on this one again, I'll go ahead and purchase that PDF chart because it does work in Pattern Keeper. So love my electronic patterns and keeping track of stitching. So I'm sure that one will come out again after the Halloween season and once I get back into winter. Okay, last but not least, my Big Mama Jamma, which I think has been renamed at this point to that officially. This is the Grand Library. I'm doing the regular size max color version of this chart. The artist is Amy Stewart and it's charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. I am stitching this on 18 count Easy Guide Ada, 2/1 full cross with the called for DMC. I'm going to put a picture up of where I started 2025 on this piece. In 2025 so far, I've done 25,204 stitches. Worked on it for 46 days so far. And in total now on this piece, I'm at 237,280 stitches for 58.91%. Now what I did was color completed the top 5 and the bottom 10 colors, and now I've gone back in June and gone to the sections that I haven't completed yet, and now I have the next top 5 colors and the bottom 15 colors that I'm stitching in the sections that haven't been completed before. So now I'm back in this fireplace section and have completed those top 5 and bottom 15 colors in this section, and then I'll move over to this section on the left, the next unfinished section, and just work my way across and see if that still works for me to do those color completions at this point. I will take a picture real quick and show it everything spread out, what it looks like now with all those colors completed, and working my way back. So that is actually it for my WIPs. That's my full WIP-Parade. Thanks for sticking around if you've stuck with that. The only thing I wanted to talk about for plans is that tomorrow is my birthday. So I do have a planned start of Alice in Wonderland Salve by Owl Forest Embroidery. This is a freebie that was on their website. It's something I wanted to start for a couple of years. And at StitchCon last year, I was at a table with Karen and Kathy from Stitching Past My Bedtime. And they had planned to start it too. And I think they did. and or at least Karen did, but she wasn't particularly liking it. So Karen was my table mate again at StitchCon this year, and I said, oh, I plan to start it for my birthday, and she said, oh, I'll restart it with you. But she started talking about, like, she didn't necessarily like all of the entire pattern, so she was thinking of maybe just doing the center or maybe just doing parts of what she actually liked. And I thought that was a really good idea because I like the pattern, but there's a couple of pieces that I'm like, they don't really speak to me. I don't really care if I stitch those or not. So I started playing with it when I got home from StitchCon and came up with this recharted panel version of the favorite sections that I had of that pattern. So I showed Karen and she got really excited and wants to start with me tomorrow. And then she showed Kathy and Kathy wants to restart it tomorrow with us too. So if anybody else would like to join along, that is for my birthday sal. I know it's an older pattern, so a lot of people have already done it, or it may not be your cup of tea. Pun intended, I guess, for Alice in Wonderland. But I'm really excited about it now with these sections that speak to me more, and it's definitely more my style in the sections that I want to do. Haven't completely decided on floss yet. I think I pulled some specialty flosses out, and I think I'm going to do some Roxy Floss Co. colors, but I will show you next time in my next video what I end up starting, because I do plan on doing that tomorrow. Okay, that's it for all of my cross stitch section, all my plans, all of my WIPs that I've worked on in 2025. Next, I'm going to talk about books. So if that's not something you're interested in and you want to sign off at this point, I hope you subscribe and join me in the future. And until then, until I see you again, happy stitching. If you are sticking around, let's talk books. This was definitely a slower month of reading for me. I had a lot going on. I only read 4 books in June, so this should be a somewhat quicker section. I know I say I talk like a lot about stitching and a little bit about books, and it's kind of been the opposite lately, but this one will be just a little bit about books. So the first one I read was Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kristen Miller. This takes place in a southern town in Georgia, and the whole town is shaken up by Miss Lula Dean and her quest to ban books that she thinks are corrupting the children and are inappropriate to be in the library. She wants to burn them, but I think they eventually talk her out of that. But she does succeed in getting these books banned. And she decides she's going to open a little free library outside of her house with more wholesome books and things that she thinks are on her approved list. But what she doesn't know is that someone has gone in and traded all the dust jackets for these wholesome books with all of the books that she banned from the library. And there are things that most of us have read, like Lord of the Flies and Beloved, and these great classics and these wonderful books that are no longer available in the library because she's succeeded, but now are suddenly available in her little free library to everybody's surprise. So this shakes everything up in the town, and conveniently, people are kind of picking books from the library thinking it's going to be like the Southern Belle's Guide to Etiquette or something, and it becomes something about, feminism, and just totally changes the lives of these people that are reading these books, and they find new things to challenge them and change their personality and change their ways of thinking and really shake up the town. So of course, a premise about how books can change your life, speaks to me and is great for me. Always a winner, and this one was no exception. So it's really cute, and then sometimes insightful, and just a feel-good read. So I really like this one. It was really cute. But really some good progress for some of the characters and some of their prejudices and how they grew from just reading. Okay, next is The God in the Woods by Liz Moore. There's a 13-year-old girl who's disappeared from her summer camp. And as we go through in the story, the search for her, you learn things about her family, who are like the kind of rich owners of this summer camp that she's attending. They also had a son that disappeared from this camp, or disappeared from home 14 years earlier. So there's all this kind of mystery and suspicion around their family that's been going on for decades. We have other characters in the camp and around the family, that we get kind of the 2 different timelines of the girl missing now and the history of the brother that was missing 14 years ago from the 60s, and now we're in the 70s. There's definitely some secrets and keeping you on your toes for what the mystery is. You can't guess it. Anybody's a suspect. So really well written for not really knowing what's going on and any possibility. I can understand why it was on the Goodreads 2024, like best of 2024 reads. It was a really good book. Next book I read was 3 Days in June by Ann Tyler. This was a fairly quick read. It wasn't super long. It was longer than a novella, but it wasn't quite as long as a full novel. The story is that Gail is a very, very socially awkward mother of the bride who's on the weekend of her daughter's wedding, kind of a lot of mishaps happening in her life and a lot of really crazy things happening, but she's trying to keep it together for her daughter's sake, even though all these bad situations keep piling up on her. I thought this was a really great character and a really interesting perspective of like a divorced woman with an adult child, not quite old enough to retire, but not quite young enough to actually like make a ton of changes in her life, kind of set in her ways, like any sort of change to her work situation or relationships or where she lives. She's kind of in this middle ground of life and just everything that's going on with her, especially with like her daughter getting older and getting married and kind of thinking of losing that relationship or how different it will be. So it was super cute and it was funny at times, especially the relationship of Gail with her ex-husband, who they're still really good friends and get along really well, but annoy the crap out of each other. So it was super cute, like relationships and just funny at times and a really kind of refreshing perspective of a woman closer to my age of being able to relate with a little more of where they're at in life. The next book I read, last but not least, is Atmosphere by Taylor Reed Jenkins. This Taylor Reed Jenkins is always a must-read for me, and I always, any sort of thing that she's releasing, I always do the pre-order, and I'm excited when it comes out, and as soon as it loaded to my Kindle, I wanted to read it right away. So this takes place in the 1980s when there were not a lot of women in NASA programs. The main character is Joan. Her entire life has a love for stars and space and the atmosphere and astronomy. And she's a professor of physics and astronomy and comes across an ad for NASA recruiting women specifically for a space shuttle program. So she decides to try for it and applies. And she suddenly, finds this passion for being one of the first women that goes into space and being one of the women that gets accepted into this program, and it becomes like her whole life. And she does get accepted and begins the program with several others. And we learn about these characters in the program. There's a little techie stuff. It got a little too technical for me with the space stuff for a little while, but it didn't take away from the story for me. But she does go through this program. We have, while we have kind of alternating chapters of a current timeline of something's gone wrong on one of the space missions, and Joan is actually in mission control talking to these people, these other characters that we're learning in the alternate chapters, what her relationships are with these other characters as she's going through this program, or what their relationships are to each other, or what their histories are. So we're learning about these characters at the same time that we're hearing the story of the current timeline of something's gone really wrong. And how do we help them and how do we make this mission come home? So there's the back and forth of that, but then also this like history of Joan being in this program and all these other characters and how she feels about them and finding these relationships. And there's a very, very, very heart-wrenching, like weeping my eyes out moment towards the end of it. But it was just an amazing way to portray the beauty and the power of love and however long you're able to experience it, and just very, very powerful women and what women have done for advancing women in the world, especially when it comes to a technical program like this, like NASA. So it kind of touches on that a little bit with Sally Ride and what sort of pressure must have been on her to pave the way for women forever in this program. So just amazing the way that, especially as a woman, how it was portrayed in here, done really well. But even more so, just the fictional part of the story and the relationships that Joan has with the people around her, with her colleagues, with her niece, with her sister, with a lot of people in her life. That was just really, really well done. So again, great book by Taylor Reed Jenkins, probably one of my favorites of hers, but a little different than her normal romance of some of her other things that she's written. So a little more technical, and then a little different on the aspect of the relationships and Joan's character too, who's really, really driven. So really good one. Definitely recommend that if you get a chance to read that. So that is it for all of my books that I read in June. Thank you again for joining me. If you made it this far, I hope everyone has a great month of stitching and reading, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.